So you need me to use it? Can you hear that better? Do I need to scream? Can you hear this? Okay. So, oh, we're videoing this? Hey, Angie, if you're watching, con- congratulations, Angie. I wish I could. You need to be here. Come on now, girl. No, I'm kidding. I've seen the pictures. Beautiful baby. So we've been on a journey. This is retreat 3, and you all are here because you're the board, the staff. So if you remember, I keep putting, I keep saying, there's an inner core, and then it keeps expanding out. The group tomorrow gets to know, gets gets to come in, and they're even a more of a core, or not. You're more of the core than they're the next circle out. So I deal with you guys and ladies on a more intricate type of you're the board. So when we start through all of this stuff, what we're going to see is conflict will arise. Not everybody's happy. Not everybody that talks in tongues is sweet. None of that stuff. So this session deals with conflict and how to handle that biblically. It'd be nice if we all just did Matthew 18. There's a thought that we followed the Bible, but even in Bible churches, we don't do that. And so that's what I want to talk to you about. So we've been leading up the first 2 sessions. We've been talking about vision and values and culture. So vision and values and cultures. What many pastors and leaders want is to get to the strategy piece. But if you don't understand the vision, values, and culture, you can have all the strategy you want, and you can find yourself in trouble. As a matter of fact, you will see conflict happen because when we deal with the value piece, there are going to be people in the church, not necessarily in this group and not necessarily in the group tomorrow, but in that next circle of people, there'll be people that don't like where you land on the values. So we've talked about in the times past about the I dream of a church statements, and so we'll deal with that tomorrow. And I can't say too much because then they'll say, well, where was that? We want to hear that again, and so I don't want to have to repeat that. So we have the vision. This is on your bulletin every Sunday. Connecting people to Christ and to one another. So we're going to go over the I dream of a church statement, and we're going to say, does that help? Does that really succinctly say what we're wanting to say as far as the vision of the church? Now, Pastor, last time I was here, we talked about values. And so this is the area where conflict is going to rise. This is the area where people are going to fight over these things because we all have conflicting values. As a matter of fact, every one of you in this room have personal values that may or may not be concentric with the values of the organization. And sometimes that's a hard struggle to learn how to do with this, how to deal with this, because conflict happens. So when I pastored, we're going through this whole process of vision and values and mission, and we're like, so we settled our vision statement was connecting people to others and to God. We started with others first because we thought that we need to connect, that evangelism is relational. So we said we want to connect them to others, and from those others they can connect to God. So we were very intentional in how we worded that. We came up with values that said we believe everybody matters. We want to welcome the unchurched here, the de-churched, the people that aren't in church. We want them to come to our church. I had a man that was a high I. Remember on the disc scale, the high I. He was just like off the charts. He was retired. I think at the time he was about 78 years old. he worked at Albertsons as, you remember they give away those sample things, those and whatever he sold from those sample, or that people would buy from those samples, he got some money for that. He is like it's like a sales thing that he would get that. He was always quick to tell me he was in the top 5 of the salesmen in the region, which would include the Dallas Metroplex. We were in Texarkana. So he was really quick to tell me, in other words, I'm good. I connect with people. So we go through the whole thing about values, and I talk to him about values, the high I. He's this high I. He's a World War II vet. He is in the Air Force, and he was that vet. So he had a personal value that he was one of our greeters. I mean, he connected with people because he was there, but he had a personal value that if you were a man and you came inside a building, your hat was to come off. And so it invariably, if somebody came in the building, that a guy that came in the building that was not, that he didn't catch, or if he caught him in the foyer, he would go to them and say, that hat needs to come off. You need to take that hat off. That's disrespectful. And he did. His value system was destroying the vision of connecting. How many of you know that just doesn't connect with others? But he had a value system. I'm not saying his value system was wrong. I'm just saying that wasn't the value system of the church. Certainly we ought to have respect. Certainly we ought to have honor. Certainly we ought to have all these things. And so his value system was destroying that. So this is the value system, and we're going to flesh this out some more, and tomorrow I'll deal with this some more. But these are the how many did we say, Mark? The 8 things that we landed on that had the highest from all of the group, that had the highest. Now, if yours didn't make it, let's don't have conflict yet. Let's don't argue yet. But these are the 8 values. And so prayer was up there, and evangelism was up there, family ministry was up there, lost people, which actually could be in evangelism, was up there, excellence, doing things with excellence was up there. Well, it doesn't take long to walk around the church and see. I've been here enough times to know now that prayer is a value of this church. They pray. You pray on Tuesday nights. You pray on Saturday nights. You pray. I mean, this church prays. Here's what you have to ask. The question is, how many, if this is a value, how many are doing this? So does everybody have this value, or has our personal value overtaken, and this is being superimposed upon the organizational value? We have evangelism and lost people. So tomorrow I'm going to ask, if that's a value of ours, how many of you led to the Lord? Somebody last year. How many of you invited somebody to church last year? So if you're going to say that's a value and you're not living that, I don't care what Pastor Mark says on Sunday behind the pulpit, if people don't see you doing this, they're not going to do it. So I'm going to say that. Family ministry. It doesn't take long to be here to know that family ministry is a value of this church. Giving, generosity. Now this one I'm going to hammer tomorrow. I've asked permission from Pastor Mark. I just almost got in the flesh several times of this. So I asked him, I said, what's the total income of this church? And he told me the total income of this church. I said, we did some calculations and found out that 9 families, which includes everybody in this room, 9 families from this church give 70% of the income. So you can't tell me that that's going to be a value and you not give. Either you need to switch your value, or we need to pray that you guys never leave, never go to see Jesus, and keep being. I mean, that's the reality of it all. 70%. And I can promise you, I told Pastor Mark, I said, you know what needs to happen is we need to preach a whole bunch of sermons to about giving. Maybe the whole year, I don't know. And here's the deal, is people hadn't caught, if that's the value, and when you start talking about giving, watch what happens. People, they're either going to be, you know what, they're either going, this room will be happy because you already do it. And the people that don't value that are going to get ticked off. So there's going to be conflict. How are you going to deal with that? World missions, Bible knowledge. These are the things that landed on the high values of Northridge. Now, why is that important? Because these values help us determine on everything we do ministry-wise, is that what we need to be doing? So there's a lot of good things out there to do. There's a lot of good ministries out there to do, but is that part of the value? So I told Pastor Mark, how can you incorporate, you say prayer is a value. The church said, this group, the Saturday group said prayer is a value. How can you incorporate that into family ministry? How can you help them? So that when all of this starts taking place and you start doing more and more of the values, conflict's going to arise because somebody is not going to have one of those things as a personal value. I mean, as a personal value, and because they don't have a personal value, they're not going to want it in the organization. So in your notebook, we talk about 5 classes of people in the church. They're unbelievers, they're believers, there's disciples, there's servant leaders, there's reproducers, which are disciples who make disciples. So in every church, you have these 5 groups that are there. You've got some that are just unbelievers. I had a guy in the church that I pastored in Arkansas that would sit over to my right. We had a fan shape. He would sit like right over here, and he would come with his wife, but he was lost. He told me, he said, I'd go home every day and cuss you and get in my chair and get in my recliner, and he was an unbeliever coming to church. Yeah, he came because he valued his marriage and he wanted to be with his wife. He loves his wife. He wanted to be there. But he couldn't stand, he was an unbeliever coming. And so the next step was for him to come across that line. He became a believer. He never made the next step into becoming a disciple. He was a believer. He was going to be with Jesus, but he wasn't going to be a disciple. Same in this church. You're going to have people that are unbelievers. You're going to have people that are just believers, and they're like, hey, I'm there. My name's written in the book, and I'm just there. But they'll never cross the line to be disciples. And then you're going to have some that are servant leaders, which you in this room are servant leaders. You're here and you're giving of your time, your treasure, your talent, and then reproducers. That's where we're trying to get people to. And so I know numeric growth is not the only indicator of church health, but the infusion of new people by conversion or by transfer growth usually creates more people to be ministered to. So the question that you as the board and staff have to help Pastor Mark with is this: at what size does a church become difficult or impossible for the pastor to care for all the people? Let me just tell you, it's somewhere around 30 to 50. And when it gets more than that, there is no way physically possible the pastor can care for all the people. No way. So how are you going to address that? How are you going to deal with that? The word pastor means shepherd or sheep herder. I like what Carl George said in How to Break Growth Barriers. Laying the foundation for my conviction that the concept of a pastor needs a broader, fuller definition that of solo shepherder if we are truly to multiply disciples as Jesus commanded in His Great Commission. So what happens is we've got to shift the board, the staff, the pastor from being doers to becoming developers. We've got to make that shift. So how can we make the shift for you to be developers so that people have the values that you have? How do you do that? So it's easy if you're going to just be the doers, you're probably at the level you're always going to be. Because you can only either that or you have to get some more doers in. And when you get so many, you get so few doing so much, that eventually they say, I can't do anymore. Most people quit the church instead of saying, and they go somewhere else because they feel guilty because they can't do anymore. which means then your ministry has to be limited because you can't do you can only do so much. So Pastor Mark and I spent what 3 or 4 hours just grilling him today, and 6 or 8, it felt like that. So between level 1, level 2, and there's this tension. You got to put one foot in level 1 and lead from level 1, but then move towards level 2, and that development. And when level 2 comes, that means there are more people there, and so that makes you have to become more of a rancher than just a shepherd, where you're doing all of these things. And I know Jesus called himself the Good Shepherd. He broadened the term in practice from just caring from one sheep at a time. It seems like, from a reading of the Gospels, he spent about 75% of his time making other ministers rather than just doing the work of ministry. It seemed like that's what he did. So here's the thing. Pastor Mark needs to be a developer, not a doer. This is why I'm talking to you tonight. You're his board. You're the inner circle. You're the staff. You're the inner circle. Angie, we're talking to you. You're there. You're his inner circle. But when he makes the shift, I can promise you, from being a doer to a developer, conflict is going to develop. People in their mind, they don't say it this way, but people's mindset in the Church of America today is we pay the staff to do the work of the ministry. We've got Ephesians 4, 10, 11, 12 backwards. Instead of the pastor equipping, what they say is, Pastor, you're going to do, and we're going to watch you do. I think I told this group that when I moved my first church, I pastored. The grass kept growing and growing and growing and growing, and one of the board members finally said to me, "Hey, Pastor, the last guy that was here mowed the yard." And I said, my response was, well, I called him. He didn't want to do it anymore. He's not coming back. Somebody else is going to have to do it. So we have to develop him. So for this church to move, so I'm talking to this group, to do that next level potential, you have to learn how to recruit, how to train, how to empower others to do much of the ministry. So how does Pastor Mark and the board survive criticism and chaos and conflict? How does Ephesians 4:12 become a reality at Northridge, where the pastors equip people to do ministry? And most people say, no, we pay you to do ministry and we'll watch. And that's not the way God designed it. So you're at about 140-ish, Pastor Mark says, somewhere in there. The next level becomes that 200, that 150 to 200. So how does Pastor Mark do that? How do you move to that level numerically? We have to develop a way of leading and governing that goes beyond the energy and personal availability of pastor. Can't be everywhere. Pastor can't do everything. He just can't. He will wear himself out. So we have a survey that we do in Acts 2. We send it out. I've given Pastor Mark the link to that. I don't know if he sent that out yet or not, but here's what we have discovered. In the churches that have done the Acts 2 survey, the number 2 predictor of church health and growth in any church was the absence of unresolved conflict. The number 2 predictor. The number 2 predictor was the absence of I didn't say you wouldn't have conflict, but unresolved conflict. So Pastor Mark, we've been championing. Today we're setting out the course. We're going to start casting vision. We're going to start working tomorrow on a strategic plan. We've been building mission and values and vision, and we've been getting all this foundational work. And some of you are chomping at the bit we just want the plan. We just need to move. We just got to go. We just got to go. And what you don't understand is this, is that the moment he starts, whenever it is that he decides we're going to start this thing, the potential of conflict is there. And if we don't know how to deal with that biblically, it's going to cause chaos up in here. And so we need to know how are we going to deal with that. So this is what today is about. So the first thing is this: observations about conflict. Conflict is unavoidable. If you have more than 3 people in your family, you understand what I'm saying right here. It's going to happen. Now I want to say this. Normally, if you're going to have conflict, this blows my mind. People think that they can have. People think that they can't even deal with their own home, and they think they can come to church and make it right. I know it's just us chickens here tonight, so I can talk just plainly, but that's always amazed me. Confrontation, biblical resolution to conflict is difficult. It is very difficult to do this. It really is. Why do people not like to deal with conflict? Or one of my professors at Oral Roberts said carefrontation instead of confrontation. It was carefront. I want to carefront you because you can't keep acting this way. Because really, if we acted this way on the job, we'd get a skillet upside our head. Or fired, or at home we get the skillet upside our head. Well, one reason is because we don't want to be disliked. Well, most pastors don't get up and say, I think I want to tick some people off because I just hope they just don't like me today. I don't know of any pastor across America that says, I think that's my goal. We all want to be liked. And some people will they will choose not to say anything because they don't want to be disliked. Or misunderstood. They don't want to be misunderstood. So I had a lady, and it's just us here talking. I know. I had a lady in our worship service. We're a Pentecostal church. However, in today, when I grew up in the Pentecostal church, the only people that came to Pentecostal churches were Pentecostal. Except because we didn't have air conditioner, because Pentecostal churches were so poor that they just had windows, and so there were some times that they would be out and all this kind of stuff. So I had a lady in the church that would express herself quite exuberantly all across the church. Didn't matter. All across. And people would, she sat right there where Pastor Mark is. Nobody sat from the middle over. No one sat there. They all sat over here. And it caused confusion in the body of Christ. So I called her in my office. I said, her husband came. I said, I want to tell you, I'm not against you expressing yourself. I'm not against all of this kind of stuff. But there is a place to have corporate worship, and there's a place for private worship. And what you do in private is totally different than what you can do corporately. Well, you would have thought, it was bad. And I said, I don't mind you. Can you just do that up in the balcony? Oh, no. God told me to do this. The moment they throw the God card down, what are you going to say? And here's what I said to her. Listen, I'm the pastor. I didn't quite say it that way. I said this. I said, one day I'm standing before God for this church. And if I'm right and you're wrong and you have a bad attitude, you're in trouble. But if you're right and I'm wrong, then I'm in trouble. But for right now, people won't even come in. So it wasn't long before she was telling everybody that I was against expression of worship. I was misunderstood. People don't like to be misunderstood. So I had to deal with that. Another reason we don't do it is the fear of rejection. Again, we want to be liked. We don't want to say, well, they don't, and we'll just be rejected. Or how about this? What if it makes things worse? Now, I went to them according to Matthew 18, and what if it doesn't work and they just explode on me? I don't know if I want to do it. Or fear of the unknown. I don't know how they're going to respond. I don't know how they're going to act. Or fear of sharing our feelings. Some people just don't, they just don't want to share their feelings. or lack of confrontation skills. George Barna a number of years ago did a survey that that over 70% of pastors don't deal with, they said they don't deal with conflict because they don't have the skills to deal with conflict. 70%, 7 out of 10 pastors don't deal with it because they don't. My pastor that I work for, one of the pastors I work for, his idea of confrontation management and how he dealt with it was to show up and pray until they left. And if they left, then that was, he never dealt with anything. He never did. I said, why don't you deal with that? Why do you let them do this? Why do you allow this stuff to happen? He said, I can't do it. I can't deal with it. The only thing I know to do is pray. He'd walk the sanctuary from 6:30 in the morning till 9:30 in the morning, and just that was his conflict. That's how his conflict resolution was. So what are some causes of conflict? One of them is just human nature. Some people just like being divisive. They just, I mean, do you know anybody that just enjoys a good fight? They just, now y'all don't be hitting one another back there. H.B. London said Cain had a problem with God, but he took out on his brother. Human nature. People, just the human nature, that's cause of it. Divisive people. Divisive people and they come to Pentecostal churches. And so we got to know how to deal with that. Hurting people. You know the old adage, hurting people hurt people. It's a cause of conflict. It's amazing. It took me a while as a pastor to realize whenever people came in, they really weren't mad at me. They were mad at their spouse, or they're mad at their job, or they're mad at their boss, or they're mad at their kids, but they took it out on me. There's political people. There are people that say, listen, I give this, and because I give, you ought to do this. And they play that, they throw that political card down. Poor leadership. They just don't know how to deal with that. I preach quite frequently. I preach two of the themes that I preached on a lot in my 23 years of pastoring were how to deal with conflict and money. Those are the two things I preached on a lot. Because I felt if I could teach people, or I could teach the sheep how to get along with one another without biting one another, it would affect every other area of our life. Just like Mel said when he came in and saw the dealing with conflict, he said, well, maybe my marriage will be helped tonight or something like that. Some church folks have the old factory fatigue. The old factory fatigue is when you have smelled something for so long that you can't smell it anymore. And that's what unresolved conflict does. Now listen, the number 2 indicator of church health and growth is there's no unresolved conflict in the church. I can assure you that everybody that calls Northridge home, they know who to leave alone in the church. They know, oh, that's just so-and-so. That's how they are. That's just them. They know in this church who doesn't get along with whom. They know that. They know. Don't let them serve together, because there could be chaos up in here. The home folks know the story from 15 years ago that never got resolved. Really resolved. They know, the home folks know, that's been here a while, know why the last pastor left. They know all of this. And they've not been dealing with the conflict for so long that they think it's been resolved. But when new people come in, I can promise you they can sense something in the air. And they don't know what it is, but they know something's not right. They can feel this in the air. And that's what unresolved conflict feels like. They come in and they're not here very long, and they're like, man, what? And when Pastor Mark starts preaching about these values, and he starts preaching about vision and what we're going to do, that unresolved conflict is going to start rising. And I'm not a prophet or the son of a prophet, but I believe I can say with certainty, Pastor Mark, that stuff like this is going to happen. Now, I don't have time to unpack all this, even though Sean made me a coffee that'll keep me awake till midnight. But I got to tell you, you can have good confrontation. One of the things you probably know is this: don't use action words, use feeling words. When you make statements like you never, or you always, or you have to, it puts people in a corner. So if I look at Sean and say, Sean, listen, when you roll your eyes when I'm speaking, it makes me feel like you're disinterested or you disagree with me. That's a total different statement than if I say, Sean, you're disinterested and you disagree with me. Because if I make that statement, Sean, you're disinterested and disagree with me, he says, no, I'm not. But if I say, this is how I feel, I feel like you're disinterested. He can't argue with that. He can't argue with my feelings. So one of the things I used to tell the people, that especially the closer that, remember the whole pyramid thing, and the higher up they went, and especially the higher up they went, I would say this kind of stuff to them. I can't force you to be like, as their pastor, I would say, I can't force you to be like this. But the person who fills your role is going to do this. I hope it's you. I hope it's you. I can't force you to tithe. I can't force you to, but the person who fills that role is going to do it. I hope it's you. Lyle Schaller says on any given day, 3/4 of all church ministries is significantly reduced because of non-productive and destructive conflict. Conflict is so severe in 1/4 of the churches that the conflict has to be reduced before the church can even accomplish anything. The average pastor, according to Lyle Schaller, says the average pastor spends 20% of his time with church conflict. Pastor Mark, when I asked him that, he said he spends 33. No, I'm kidding. He didn't say anything. I didn't ask him that. Now, the only way you can avoid conflict is to do nothing. That's true in your marriage. That's true on the job. That's true in a church setting. The only way you can avoid is to do nothing. Now, I know none of you are here tonight this way, but I'm going to give you some characteristics of some difficult people. I know it's none of you in here, but there are some characteristics here. Pastor Mark, there's about 3 ladies that walked in across here. I don't know if you need to go and check, or if you know who's. Yeah, there's 3 ladies that just walked through there. I couldn't tell who they were because I'm not from here. I just want to make sure it's okay. So, here are the people. Now, if you want to just kind of spread out, no, not really. But I was going to say you can start putting church members' names by some of these people. But don't put the one sitting beside you or that. Don't do that. The first one is the Sherman tank. I don't know if you've ever met this kind of difficult person or not. They're the ones that they create intimidation. They like to ride over people. Their characteristic is aggressive and whoops. They like to ride right over. Yeah, they're aggressive and hostile, and their mindset is I'm right, you're wrong. So you deal with the Sherman tank, you got to be a Sherman tank. That's the only way you can deal with Sherman tanks. You have to do that. And most pastors, remember, from the disc are S's and C's. It is hard for them. And most of this board was an S and a C. So it's hard for you to say, no, we're not going to tolerate that. So I'm working with the church that they had a Sherman Tank board member, and he and I had to we had to have a come to Jesus meeting and say you're not going to act this way. You're just not going to. I don't care if you have a title. I don't care. You're not going to act this way. We're not going to tolerate it. And so you have to deal with them that way. The second one is the volcano. So you can take some moments to write down who you think is the Sherman Tank. The volcano causes tension. The reason they cause tension is because they're unpredictable, they're explosive, they're unapproachable. You have to deal with them by removing them from the crowd. You have to remove them because they're just going to explode on you. You have to remain calm. This is where you have to quote, a soft answer turns away wrath, over and over and over. So I think most of you are S's and C's. You probably don't have any problem with this one. I used to do this because I always thought, my wife tells me that I don't need to, you just have to remain calm, that kind of stuff. But my wife would say just let me just vent and let me say things. So here the next thing is you have to listen without interruption, because they blow things out of proportion. So I just let them sit there. They will go and go and go and go and go and go. So is that all? Do you have anything else? No. Or they're on the phone, and I would say, is that all? You got anything else? Because I want them to get it all out. I don't want them to erupt. And I don't try to fix it. My wife would tell me, quit trying to fix stuff. Just let them go. And then I would ask them, it leads to the next one, is, repeat the details again for me, because I want to make sure I get this right. Because when I get ready, when I go deal with this, I want to quote you, and I want to make sure I have it all written down correctly. So you have to remove all the hearsay, the exaggeration. You have to give a soft answer, clear answer, and then you have to hold them accountable for what they said. This is how you deal with people. You have to deal with it, and no one likes to do this in the church. The number 2 predictor of church health is the absence of unresolved conflict. So when you deal with the volcano, you have to hold them accountable. You can't just let them explode. Well, everybody's upset and da-da-da-da-da. And you go do the investigative work and you come back to them and say, listen, I need to hold you accountable for what you just said. The third kind of person is the thumbsucker. The pastors have a special ringtone on their car. It's just like a whine. I mean, we know when they call, because it's like it just like sucks the life when you get this one. They're the ones that pout. Really, grown, spirit-filled people pouting. You just want to, it's like the old preacher said, I don't mind putting the bottle in. I just hate parting the whiskers to get it. They just pout. There are people that just pout. Have you ever noticed it's the weaker person who always controls the relationship? It's true in a church. It's true in a home. It's true in a family. It's true on the job. Unless you deal with confrontation, the weaker person always controls the relationship. And the reason they control the relationship is because the stronger person accommodates them because they don't want to deal with conflict. The way you deal with them is by telling them your moodiness is a choice. You have to encourage them to be character-based, not emotion-based. They can act their way into a feeling rather than feel their way into an action. So you need to expose them to people who have real problems. Really, in this room, do we really have problems? We can take you to people who have some real problems. Let me show you. And then you never reward pouting. If you ignore it, you'll watch what happens. Watch what happens. Usually when I when I'm teaching this, I have the clip, Andy Griffith clip, you know, when the new kid moves to the town and teaches Opie how to throw a temper tantrum, you know, and Andy just, what are you doing? You know, well, get up off the floor. You're getting your clothes dirty. You know, I'm just throwing a temper tantrum. And da-da-da. He just ignored him. Watch what happens. Watch what happens when you just ignore it. And then there's the wet blanket. They're so draining. You don't even want them. I mean, you just don't want to bring up anything. They're the ones that at an annual business meeting, you just like, oh, you know who they are. You know what questions they're going to ask. You know, you're just like, here we go. They're the classic impossibility thinker. There's no way we can do that. When Pastor gets up here, he's going to say all of this stuff, and whenever we land on whatever values we land on, and we're going to have descriptors there, he's going to say, there is no way. They're going to say, there's no way. It just won't work. It just won't work. It just won't work. How do you deal with them? You deal with them by being honest with them. You don't cater to them. You point to past successes that they thought would fail that have now succeeded. And then you don't let them dampen your enthusiasm. Here's the way I like to say it. So this church, you guys have been through this is retreat 3. You have come a long way. Pastor Mark has spent 4 hours today. We've been laying out trying to help jumpstart him on the strategic plan, how to lay that out. It's a lot of work. He just thought he's worked up until this point. It is a lot of work. And when you come to whenever the launch is, that you decide we're going to just reveal the vision that we've been to the mountain and God has talked to us, and here's where God's leading us. Don't let people take your 11 by 17 picture and put it in a 5 by 7 frame. Don't do it. Don't let them do it. And you as the board and staff, don't let them do that to Pastor. I like that Chinese proverb that says, man who says it can't be done should not interrupt man who is doing it. And then there is the garbage collector. These people usually surround themselves with negative people. They get all the stuff. They see everything through the filter of their own personal problem. They're the ones that they attract the same kind of folks. You have to deal with them by confronting them with all of the people involved. You have to say, name everybody they're the ones that come and say, everybody doesn't like it. Who's everybody? Everybody doesn't like it. Really, who's everybody? You have to deal with that. You have to challenge the next one. You have to challenge their statements because they speak in hyperbole. Challenge them with the facts. Make them confess to the people who they have wronged. The garbage collector, if they come to you as a board member and they're just well, you know, everybody's against it, and they're not going to tell you, then here's your statement back to them. If they're not willing to come and let us fix the problem, then we don't want to know the problem. That's your statement to them. If they're not going to let you don't call pastor and say, well, yeah, I can't tell you who's mad at. No. If they're not willing to come and let you fix the problem, you don't need to tell the problem. And that's what you need to tell them. And you need to expose them to the church leaders and tell this whole board and the staff needs to know this is the garbage collector. They're going to get all the garbage. The next group is the user. This is in our church what we called EGRs, extra grace required people. They're the ones that you see them come and you go, oh, Jesus, thank you, God, right now, Lord, give me grace. Because they demand a lot of energy and time. They put guilt trip on you. You know, well, I didn't see you at my son's ball game. I don't know. They refuse to accept any responsibility. They're the ones that keep coming up for prayer that God will do a miracle for a new job, and they don't do it. They don't even go out and they don't give. They don't go out, put out resume. They don't do any of that stuff. So what you should do is set limits on your willingness to help. Set willingness on your willingness to help. You can't make people do certain things. You have to require responsibility. I will only help you if you do this. I will only help you if you do this. And you do this. And you do this is what then I'll help you. It's not your responsibility. And so those are the people that are in this church. You could sit down. Pastor Mark's probably going to meet with y'all the next few weeks, next board meeting, staff meeting, and you can just start writing names down beside all these people. You're already seeing some of them right now. So in How to Break Growth Barriers, that book, what we know is you have to use more than one leadership style on those. Here's what you need to know, that regardless of the title, regardless of the stakeholders have influence. There's every one of these people in this room have some kind of influence. Now, this group has more influence than anybody. But somebody has influence on somebody. And you know who they hang out with, so they have influence. You need to know that. So you just have to determine, are we willing to when we start launching all this, are we willing to deal with that? They determine, their decision is based on resources that they can control. And age and tenure influence their behavior. Let me just stop and ask, is there any question, comment, concern? I really like stakeholder is anybody that comes in, that's really coming to this church. Anybody coming to the church, or there are different levels of stakeholders that I'm going to get to in the next chart. But like all of you are stakeholders in this church, and you have a higher stakeholder. You're a higher stakeholder, but everybody in the church that comes on Sunday morning is a stakeholder to some measure, is what I'm trying to say. You could be. Of course, there is Pastor Mark's way of dealing with conflict. You just shoot them. Just shoot them. Yeah. So I love this. I love what Warren Bird, in the next one, I think it should be, is that a chart? Yeah. This berry bucket theory. And again, you could take what we just went through, and then here are 4 buckets that he says that these are the people that are in our churches. So let's go through those. The one up there on the right is the young newcomers. They're the junior Newberries. So you can see right up here is the junior Newberries. Do I have that? Yeah. They're the ones that are younger than the pastor. They're the ones that have shorter tenure than the pastor. So pastor, I asked, remind me again, was it 13 years you've been here? 12 and a half years you've been here? So the junior Newberries would be everybody that's come to this church in the last 12 and a half years. So that other than Sean, that wouldn't be any of you, would it? All of you were here longer than that. So you're not a junior Newberry. This has nothing to do with actual age. It has to do with Pastor Mark and when he came. So 12 and a half years ago, that's who's there. So everybody that's come 12 and a half years, the last 12 and a half years, you could put as a young newcomer. Now, it's not talking about age. It's age and their attendance here. They're the ones that follow. They see Pastor Mark as their leader, unquestioned. And they're the ones that follow him without question. This is the fun group that pastors like to lead right here. Give me a church full of the young newcomers, the junior Newberries. That's who I want to lead right now. That's who I want to pastor, because they came. What we have found is it's usually easier to win people 2 to 10 years younger than you. So Pastor Mark is 39, and so he can lead people 37. I mean, that's the easier ones. So whatever that is, 2 to 10 years, 39. So it's 30, 37 to 29. Pastor Mark can reach. So then there are the older newcomers, and they're the ones older than the pastor. Now these are actually older than him, physical age, and they've attended longer. So all of you have attended longer than him, so you could be in this older newcomer place right here. I hope not the third one where you agree in some areas but not in others. This is the group that considers themselves more experienced. The way you lead this group is you have to have the process for them, and you have to lead with suggestions, not demands. I left that one off of there. And then you can't expect to completely trust leadership without the process. This is the group that wants to see the process. So it'll be interesting tomorrow. Yes, ma'am. Not demands. I forgot that to put that one on there. That would be actually letter E. Demands. It's not on my PowerPoint. I missed it. Demands. So when pastors, here's the deal. So when you figure out how old the average congregation is that you're going to pastor, when Jesus tells Pastor Mark and Paul, okay, it's time for you to go do something else, and whatever this average age of this congregation is, let's say it's 55. If you go and get somebody that's 30, 35, they're going to be, it's going to be tough. You got to look at this stuff. Why is it tough on them? And you're going to have a lot of older newcomers there. And guess who's going to come in? Is this going to be somebody usually 2 to 10 years younger than him or her? And so then you're creating more tension to the value system. You have the older long-termers. This is the group that, and look back at your chart. You can keep flipping back, but you see where they are. This is the group that's most difficult to lead. They're the longer tenure than the pastor. They're older than the pastor also, and this group requires patience. I love that quote. The difference between a leader and a martyr is about 3 paces. And it requires patience to lead this group. And the only one that maybe the founding pastor may be the exception. Then there's the younger long-termers, the junior former berries, usually children of the senior former berries. It really, if you take time to pull that chart out and just kind of put that side by side and look, you can see that. The tendency is to be ambivalent. So how do you deal with that? So you look at that, go back to, I mean, you can, I don't think there's anything to fill out right there. If you look at that chart, how do you lead them? Well, you got to lead each group differently. You don't lead them the same. Pastor Mark has to look at this, and you have to look at this and lead them differently. Notice that the arrows are pointing out. So the two that are diagonal from one another they're at polar opposites that are there, and they're usually the most distinct from one another, both in their identity and their leadership needs. And I already said pastors tend to be more comfortable with the junior Newberries. Pastor Mark, and I was the same way. The ones that come in under your leadership and that are there, those are the easier ones to lead. And so who you're probably going to have problems with and conflict when Pastor Mark starts preaching about values and vision is not the junior Newberries. I don't think Pastor Mark does this, but this is a generalization, but most pastors tend to resent the presumed lack of support from senior former Newberries. I had a young man. He went to a church, and I tried to they didn't listen to me. And I said, you shouldn't hire this guy. He's 28, 29, 30 years old, and the majority of the church was over 58. He thought because he was elected and voted in as the pastor that they all should just follow him. So remember the 5 levels of leadership? I said, dude, you're at level 1. Well, how long does it take to get to that? 5 years? I don't have 5 years. They need to follow me because I'm the pastor. It's not going to happen. They're going to introduce you to a ministry called U-Haul. And so he decided he was, no, he didn't heed the advice of me. And I said, it's not going to happen. Let me tell you what you need to do. You need to build relationship. You need to let them lead. It doesn't matter. Just lead through them. Don't feel like you have to lead through them. Nope, I'm the pastor. They're going to do that. He resigned about 3 weeks ago. Oh, it was another year. Yeah. Well, but every other board meeting he talked about resigning. I'm going to resign. I'm going to resign. I'm going to resign. Finally, they accepted his resignation. Yes, ma'am. He pastored 18 months. And he felt like they should follow him because he was the pastor. I said, I don't know what you've been smoking, but I want some of that. You can't alienate them. They're usually your major financial support. You can't. You got to employ different leadership styles. It's neat, and people say, "Well, I don't want to be fake or phony." It's neither inauthentic or inappropriate to shape your communication posture to provide various constituencies the kind of information and process they need to become your follower. So what if you need to do something? And you may have to do something. If you have to do something, here's where we're headed. Before I should have done this before because I should have redone a number 1. So you could put a 1A in your paper. And I think I should add a 1A to this slide, and that 1A is just obey Matthew 18. Obey. That if I have an issue with you, it's not on the slide, so you'll have to write it down in there. 1A, obey Matthew 18. If I have a problem with Pastor Mark, I go to Pastor Mark according to Matthew 18, and I talk to Pastor Mark. I don't talk to Deacon Mel. And you as a board member have to say, if the issue is with Pastor, whoa, don't want to hear it. We need to go to Pastor Mark together. I'll go there with you, but you don't need to tell me, you need to Pastor Mark. So we just need to obey that one. Most people who have these kinds of unresolved conflict kind of just avoid the Bible altogether. Well, let's put that part out. We don't want Matthew 18 for goodness sake. So how do you understand the goals of confrontation? How do you do that? You got to understand that. One is you have to have better understanding. How do we deal with this? How do we have positive change? These are the goals of confrontation. These 3 things: better understanding of the position. I used to tell my staff and my board all the time, there's usually an element of truth in what's being said. So I know it's painful to listen to how some people are so rude with the way they present things, and some people are not right the way they present things, but there could be a kernel of truth. So listen for that. And you're listening, you're trying to get a better understanding of what they're saying. Where's the positive change that's there? Then how can we have a better relationship with that? So when we had confrontation, one of my rules of confrontation was I tried to always do it right before lunch or right before supper, and then we'd go eat lunch together. Because it's not about them, it's about the issue that we're dealing with. And usually the issue for us is going to be over the values. So the first step is then you have to look at yourself. If Bill and Sue have a problem, and Bill and Bob have a problem, and Bill and Jane have a problem, guess what the problem probably is Bill. That's probably the problem. You got to look at yourself. You got to meet together as soon as possible. When we're in a conflict and it arises, what we're tempted to do is to avoid it. Now, I'm in a dilemma here because I just said to you, you got to meet together. But I also believe that if our first action is an overreaction, it's the wrong action. So what I taught my board and staff is give time for the heat to cool down. So in your brain, you say on a scale of 1 to 10, what is this? So I would encourage you, and I know this is my dilemma because I just said meet together as soon as possible, but then and I don't think we should avoid it. But what I encourage people to do is pray about it for about 7 days. It's a lot of times in that 7 days when you pray about it, you can get a lot of resolution that you didn't have to work for. You got for free. Now, if it's an emergency and it's you got to deal with it. I would tell them sleep on it, pray about it, go to bed, get up the next morning, and then deal with it. But don't overreact. Let some time. Maybe that's for me because I could move into high D mode just in the snap of a finger. So this is what I would say. What I'm trying to say is if we're going to have unresolved conflict, or if conflict is going to be resolved, we don't have to take people out. We don't have to shoot them. I'd want to sometimes, but we don't have to. I'm in conflict. So we're tempted to avoid it. We're tempted to procrastinate. We're tempted to ask someone else to handle it. Used to drive my wife crazy because she would want me to handle it. She doesn't like confrontation. She doesn't deal with that at all. And so I would say to her, if people had an issue, I'd say, I can't handle it for you. Now, there are certain things at certain levels I had to handle it, but I would say, you need to handle it. I did that with our kids. She would say, you just need to do some of the boys. I said, no. You need to do something. You have to handle this conflict. You got to handle that. I love the people that try to rationalize their conflict. Well, if you knew my background, you know why I acted the way I act. You know, it's my red hair. It's my red hair, and that's the reason why I act the way I do. It's because I'm redhead. I'm Irish. Because I'm Irish, that's the reason why I have all these kinds of things. And I can't help myself because I'm Irish, and I can't control my emotions. And I would always say that's not true. Because if you're having an argument with your spouse and the volume level is elevated and the phone rings, hello? You have just changed the tone of your you can handle it. You can control your emotion. So you don't let people off the hook with that. You don't let them act that way. There are some churches that have antagonists in the church, and the board needs to know, you know what, we are not, and so you have to learn how to help them. We are not going to tolerate that. You are not going to hijack this church. You are not going to hijack the values. You're not going to hijack the vision. And then you can't gunny sack it. And what that means is you can't keep stuffing it down and stuffing it down and stuffing it down and stuffing it down until one day it just explodes and spews all over people. So you have to speak the truth with love and gentleness, which means you got to be firm but fair. I like to tell people Jesus was loving, but he was not always nice. So how can you eliminate conflict? I'm setting you up. I'm telling you, when Pastor Mark and you guys decide to start moving, it's going to happen. You got to follow what we call the 101% principle, which is simply find the 1% you can agree on and give it 100%. You say, well, Jimmy, it won't work. Well, you can always decide it won't work, but why not try one more time? Follow the 101% principle. Number two, you got to love people more than the opinion. If someone loves their opinions more than people, they will defend their opinion and they will hurt people. You got to give other people wiggle room. Let them save face. If you back a 93-year-old lady into a corner and give her no out, she's coming over the top of you and beating you with her cane. I'm just telling you right now. You got to give people wiggle room. You got to learn to be flexible. Thomas Jefferson said, in matters of principle, stand like a rock. In matters of taste, swim with the current. Number 5, check your own attitude. I'm telling you, usually when people, they are saying things, there's a kernel of truth in what they're saying. You got to get past their attitude. You got to get past, so you got to check your attitude. And then you can't overreact to conflicts. I just came to tell you there is a difference between a heart attack and a hangnail. I pastored people who treated hangnails like heart attacks. Pastor Mark probably didn't have that, but I did. Pastor, I just didn't like that last song that was sung. Listen, it lasted 4 minutes. Let it go. 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 It's a hangnail. Our secular world has stolen words from us that I think we need, and one of them is the word tolerant. We need to learn to be tolerant of the things we don't like. When I looked briefly at Pastor Mark had a demographic study of this community, and a lot of this community is a younger community. Guess what that means for you and me? They're going to come, if they come to this church and you do what God has called you to do and you become what God's asked you to become, they're going to come in. You're going to have all these values, but they're going to express those values differently than you. You need to learn to be tolerant of things you don't like. So I looked at my 81, 78, however old he was at the time. Man, I said, I understand men taking off your hat. I got all of that. You need to learn to be tolerant. You need to learn to be tolerant of people who aren't like you. And you need to come along. People weren't raised like you. They have different value systems than you. And we certainly can't change anything if they won't come back. But that's not what this generation is all about. If you don't agree with me, then I'm done with you. I'm done with you. My youngest son he just graduated with an MBA, and I'm not an MBA. He's working on his MBA, but he He is working as an intern for BDK. It's a accounting firm as an intern, and so I've trained him over the years. Son, if you'll do the unexpected, you'll never be forgotten. If you'll do the unexpected, you'll never be forgotten. If you do the unexpected, you'll never be forgotten. So the other day, Renata's down there with our grandbaby and the new one, number 4. They don't have names anymore to me. There's just like numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, and so that's there. Number 4. She's with number 4, and we went out to eat, and he said, "Will you take me by Everyday Thai food there?" I said, "Why are we going by Everyday Thai?" And he said, "Because I want to write a letter, thank you. I want to buy my boss a gift card that took the time to work to take the time to and hired me and work with me and coach me on how to be a better employee. And I just want to say thank you." I said, "Son, you're not like most Gen Zs. Most Gen Zs said, forget it. If you don't like the way I do it, then I'm out of here." Most people don't take that kind of time. And I said, so he understands the whole idea, and he's working on that. People would come and there's just that song and that kid, I asked them, "Have you ever been to a salad bar? Have you ever been to a salad bar?" They're like, "What are you talking about, a salad? What does that have to do with me not liking a song?" Have you ever been to a salad bar and seen something on that salad bar you don't like? I mean, I don't know why they put beets on a salad bar. I don't get it. I don't understand why they do that stuff. But I don't stand up there griping and saying, "I just can't believe they put beets on there. I can't believe they put broccoli. I can't believe they put this and that. I just no. I just go get what I want and go sit down." I don't know. Pastor Mark likes blue cheese. I mean, who eats blue cheese? Why do they even put that stuff on there? But I don't sit there at the dressing going, "I just can't believe that. Listen. I'm tolerant. I just get what I want and go sit down." So, we don't overreact to conflicts. I don't call the manager over and say, "I need you to take all the beets off of this salad bar. I need you to take the blue cheese out of the salad bar, and I'm not going to move until you do it." Matter of fact, I'm not even paying. That's what some people do. "Pastor, you don't do what I want, I'm not giving my tithes. I'm not even paying for my salad bar unless you take the beets off of it." Sorry, I'm just doing some therapy. How do you deal with it? Take the high road. Listen, I would tell my staff all the time, and it is this, and I tell the board, if you understood the power of an apology, you would be tempted to abuse it. Pastor Mark's going to do that. Listen, insecure people cannot apologize. Yeah, they can't. Insecure people can't. So we're gonna start right here. I know you people can. So let's just practice. Let's just release it in the air. Let's just say, everybody say it with 3 words. I was wrong. Ready? 1, 2, 3. I was wrong. See, that didn't hurt, did it? See? Here's what I would teach my staff to say. "I'm sorry. What can I do to make it right?" I just didn't let him say, "I'm sorry." I would say, you have to say, "I'm sorry. What can I do to make it right?" Because here's what happens. When you say, if I say to Rose, "I'm sorry. What can I do to make it right?" Rose has 2 options. Because I just put the ball in her court. She can either forgive me or she can now live in sin and not forgive me. It's the only 2 options she has. It's the only 2 options you have. You can either forgive me or you can, "I'm sorry, I was wrong. What can I do to make it right?" You either forgive me or you don't. Now, here's what you need to learn as a leader. Some of you close your books, and you need to open them back up because I want you to write this down. Here's what you have to learn. You're the inner core of leadership. You're a board member. You're a staff member. This might be worth the whole price tonight of your M&Ms. You have to learn this principle. It may not, here's what I want you to write down. It may not be your fault, but it is your responsibility. So if you weren't wrong, it may not be your fault, Mel, but it is your responsibility. It may not be your fault, but it is your responsibility. There are some things you have to fix and take responsibility for that you didn't even cause. And that's not fair. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. That's right. Absolutely. 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 And they have two. Well, that's where you get to deal with, you get to walk through that process. Yeah. I'll take that under advisement. It may not be my fault, it is my responsibility. We're not dealing with fair, we're dealing with justice, mercy, and grace. That's what we're dealing with when we say that. And you've made them just choose, am I going to sin and not forgive you? Or am I going to walk this on? Here's what, listen, you need to write this one down too. This is what I said, we're not dealing with fair, we're dealing with justice, mercy, and grace. That's what you're dealing with when it's not your fault but your responsibility. You need to write this down. I used to teach them all the time. Here's your relationship paradigm. In this church, you have to be casual with all. I think it may be in your, is it in there? Casual with all, close to a few, but unresolved conflict with no one. If you're going to have healthy, when Pastor Mark starts doing all, I can promise you, when it happens, I'm not concerned about this group. I'm not concerned about many in the next group. Maybe one or two. What I am concerned about is the next one after that on the Sunday morning. Because the moment the moment this starts coming out, potential for conflict is rising. And you have to know how to deal with that in a healthy way. If not, what will happen if you don't deal with that, you will stay at the level you are because that's the level you know how to deal with, and that's where all the conflict can be managed, is at this level. Sure. Because they have different values. Yeah. And sometimes our personal values override the organizational values. The same is true with the pastor. So I was very candid with, and this is the board, so it's just us chickens here, and Angie's watching or going to watch. But there is coming a day when Pastor Mark and Paula are going to say, it's time to, Holy Spirit's got us going somewhere else. We're doing something else. The problem that many churches have is they get pastors to come in and candidate that don't have the same value system. And then they're going to start reinstituting more different values. Not that they're wrong. You've just spent 18 months trying to hone these values. Now they come in with a different set of values, and they're going to start looking for those junior Newberries who will agree with their values, and then conflict is going to rise between every other group because of the conflict, because you will have had these values, whatever you land on, 6 to 8 values, 4 to 8 values, you will have those, and now somebody comes in, and if you don't take the time and the effort to figure out what it is they value, then you're going to have conflict, and Northridge is going to go through this cycle all over again, and people will and you'll think, where in the world are they going? And the reason why they're leaving, it's not because you're bad people, it's because they have a different value system than you. So this is vital for everything. And I told Pastor Mark, I said, you have to think in terms of when the Lord says to you and Paula, you need to go spend time with your grandbabies more. And you're headed there, and this is what you're doing. No, nobody likes to do this. Yeah, anyway. So this is why this becomes important. The systems can change. The strategic plan can change, but the value is who you are, the culture of who you are. Exactly. 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 Correct. Correct. In the Old Testament, the leadership that it was from top down. In the New Testament, it seemed good to us and the Holy Spirit. So the us becomes us, comes the core group and the Holy Spirit. So that's why we need to pray. That's why we need to see. That's why we need to discern. It doesn't matter the wording. You can say whatever. The little phrase after it, that doesn't matter. I mean, it's going to help clarify it. That could change, but the value piece needs to be the same. Yes. It is easy. You go to his Facebook page or her Facebook page, and you begin to check what it is they value. You listen. You ask questions. What do you value? Give me an example of how, if they say they value prayer, you say, give me an example of how you live out that value. You ask them, what is your value? What are your 6 to 8 family values? Before they come and candidate, you're asking them, I want a list of your personal values. No, you could. You can ask him. No, you can ask him what his value. He has a set of personal values. So from those personal values, but you didn't even know as a church what you value. So you can't ask somebody if you don't even know what you value as a church. You know what you value for you. You know what you value. I mean, you know what you value individually. Is that rain or the air conditioner? Oh, but you can absolutely say, I want to know what what are your 6 to 8 values. I promise you, most pastors in America would not even know what they value. So, mm-hmm. No. No, you can't look at a record. Okay, but look at so what y'all have said, that the majority have said you want Bible knowledge. So I suppose my presupposition is you were listening for that. It may not have been, but if I'm the board member and whenever we decide what these values are, you're not. They don't have to say them word for word, but you're looking. You don't let just them answer. You're calling their references, saying, "What do you think they value?" You're asking. They asked I've interviewed for several, and they've asked my wife's sitting right there. Well, how does Jimmy value evangelism? They don't ask me because they know I'll lie and tell them whatever they want to hear. They asked my wife, and they said, "Well, and they want to know how did Jimmy value family time with you?" They looked point blank at my wife and said, "Tell us how he demonstrated his family time with you." I'm like, holy buckets! I'm gonna have to. Did I do okay? Do I need to repent now? What do I need to do? So you absolutely can find the values of people. But you have to know as a church what your values are to see if they can even match up. A lot of board members select pastors based on their values. So I'm working with the church right now. The young man that just resigned, working with them, and they said, "We want somebody that can preach." I said, "You got to be kidding me. That's all you want is somebody, really? That's it? We could just put a DVD in. You don't need some. I mean, that's all you think that's to you is all you value?" Oh, we hadn't thought of that. Well, of course you haven't thought of that. There's not many churches that go through this exercise of sitting. This is why everybody wants to jump to the strategic plan going, "Oh, we want to do something. We just got to do something." But you never take time to build the foundation. Sorry, I'm getting preaching now, but that's where it becomes. This is vital for this church, not just here and now, but it's vital for when Pastor Mark and Paula say, "You know what? We think it seems good to us and the Holy Spirit. It is time to do something else." Now let me just say, he's never said that to me, but that he's thinking that. I don't want y'all. I won't say that tomorrow. I'm saying this to you because you're the ones that will lead this. But I'm telling you the importance of why you have to have this. So when Pastor Mark, if Sean were to leave, and he had somewhere, Pastor Mark has this, he's going to look. He should look for somebody to take his position that has these similar values. Not that somebody is bad and wrong for having a different value. It's just going to be difficult. They're going to be frustrated until this becomes a tool for every area. Leadership. Uh-huh. It's good, isn't it? Every student that when I teach at Southwestern that reads it, they have a love-hate relationship with that. Did I answer your question? Hope I'm not stepping out, but too far.
And I think we need to understand why we are trying to identify our values
Yeah.
as a church. And we're not trying to identify Mark's values, it's Northridge's values.
Yeah. So, yeah. And it's not Mel's values. It's not Mike's values. It's not Mark's values. It's not Sean's values. It's not Paul. It's our values. This is who you want as ministry leaders. People that volunteer and they work their way up and you say, "You know what? I want them leading XYZ ministry." You want them to have the values. Because if they don't have the values, then they're going to have a different agenda. And if their agenda is not going to line up with the church's agenda. And quite frankly, we have prayed. We pray all the time. You pray all the time. Pastor Mark prays all the time. And so we are saying that this is what we sense the Holy Spirit saying to us. So in essence, we're saying not only is this the Northridge values, it's God's values for our church. That's what we're saying God's saying. So this group right here has to become protectors of the values. And you cannot waver from the values. Whatever it is we decide and we land on, can't waver from it.
And let me say, when I invited Jimmy and started talking, I don't know how we ever hooked up, but when I talked to Jimmy about doing this Acts 2 thing, I had no idea that this is where we're heading. But I see now the importance of heading this way and making sure that we have our base understanding for our ministries that we have. And I know you talked, one of the things he said today was something about whenever you start a new ministry or you have somebody say, hey, I think we should do this at the church, you want to make sure that it fits the values that you say that you have at the church.
Yeah, I think I said if Sean comes and says, Pastor, I want to do this, his response to you should be, how does that tie into the value? How does it, and whatever, we've got these listed. It's going to be some kind of conglomerate of these things, because these are, and they may not end on these words. Pastor Mark's going to work with some folks, and it could look a little differently, but that's the theme. So if Chris comes and says, hey, I want to do this, he's going to say, Chris, tell me how that ties into the value. You got to explain that to me so I can explain that to others so we know how that happened. Any other thoughts or comments or? It really, because Pastor Mark is right. This becomes crucial for this group to get it, and then the next group to get it. And so they don't get it. Here's how I've couched this. So I said, Pastor Mark, whenever we land on whatever values, let's say the Bible, or let's say give, or whatever one you pick, family ministry or whatever. Whenever you get up, I think I used when he does his missions convention, he gets up and every Sunday he says something like, the reason on that mission convention, the reason why we do a mission convention, this is how he introduces his speaker. The reason why Tom Green's here is because one of the values that we have as a church is world evangelism. And because we value having a God-sized imprint on people around the world is us giving to mission. And so today I want you to welcome my friend Tom Green that will help us live out the value that we have. So you have to start phrasing things that way. Hey, the reason why I used to do it this way, because when I pastored in Texarkana, when I first went there, they had Sunday night and all that. And so and yet we said we valued family, and I said, listen. So I would say often, hey, tonight we want you to make sure because one of the values we have at the church is family. We want to make sure that you spend tonight with your family, because we think that's a value for us, and we want that to be a value for you. And so, I told Pastor Mark, and I've given him thoughts and things of the different things I would help them with in valuing the family through the year. And so you can't just say you value, you have to live that value. You have to demonstrate that value. So here's what I'm just so fired up for this church. I just want to just preach about I don't know. You don't tell me you value giving when 9 families give 70% of the income. This cannot be on there until the behavior changes. Can't. This group values that because you do it. Don't tell me you value evangelism and lost people and you've never even talked to somebody about coming to the church. Forget winning them to the Lord, just even coming to the church. So if we're going to say we value that, then we need to we need to do that. So how does Pastor Mark do that? If this is where we land, Sean brings somebody that's unchurched to Northridge, and then maybe they're not here the next time. You don't want to embarrass them. I grew up in the time when all the visitors, please stand. Like, no, we don't want to do that. You know, so he says, one of the things we value is people who are unchurched. And if you're here today and you're unchurched, we want to just say we value you today, and we want to thank you for being here, and we just want to validate you. This is probably how I would couch it. I would have a elevator speech that I would memorize. We value unchurched people, and we're glad you're here today. And if you're here, we would love for you to fill out our connection card or check with, because you are of value to us. Yes, ma'am. Right. Right. So you're going to have to write Pastor Mark. I agree with you. I just said it because it was easier to say because I hadn't really thought about it. So you're going to have to write for Pastor Mark what he needs to say. If you're new to this church, we value relationship. I just said it that way because that was the first thing that came to my mind. But you're right. When you think about it, you're like, I don't know if I want to say that. So. Yeah. Good. Yeah. All right. She told me after the last time, she said, I'm doing it. I'm doing it. I'm doing it, Jimmy. I'm doing it. Yeah. Yeah. So, however, see, all y'all need to give it Pastor Mark. Y'all, I just said it so y'all would know. Y'all leave me alone. I'm kidding. But yes, now you're getting it. Yes, y'all are getting it. So every when you take up the offering, hey, because we value family ministry, we want you to know that some of your offering your offering, which we all know that 70% of it came from here. You don't have to tell that to them. But these new cameras in here is enabling us because of that, because we value family ministry, and some of you are having to stay. Some of you are watching us right now online because because of your family situation, and we value that when you give in this offering and we buy stuff like these cameras so that you're able to be part of our family. Thank you for giving. Yeah. However, you can write up 4 or 5 of these elevator speeches for each of those values. Yeah. There you go. So all of this stuff, from time to time, Pastor Mark, if the Bible is that, Pastor Mark's going to get up. He doesn't say it every Sunday, but from time to time, he needs to say before he preaches, one of the things we value here's the deal, is you all know that. People that are new, people that are watching online don't know that. So you'll get tired of hearing it, but he needs to say from time to time, one of the things we value here is the Bible. And we think the Bible is our guidebook for living. And so we invite you to turn today because we value that. We're going to preach from not Facebook. We're not preaching from, TikTok or any of that. We're preaching from God's Word today because that's a high value of ours. So will you turn to Mark chapter 3 and let's read from that word today. So all you're doing is a 1 or 2 little sentence snippet that reminds not this group, but reminds everybody else of the things that we value. Yeah. Well, be, bec yeah, the Giving Church, I would say, because I would say, do you do a missions offering once a month, or like some churches, or you just okay? So so when do you on Faith Promises? Is there ever a Sunday that you say today is Faith Promise Sunday? That if you made the faith promise today, we'd like to just. So for me, it was the first Sunday of every month, because that's usually when most people get paid, have the money. For us, I would say today. Now you can give anytime, but the first Sunday is Faith Promise Sunday. That if you made a faith promise, we would like you to turn it in at that time. So I would say the giving, you could spend it there. This church is so giving because you give. We are able. Today is Mission Sunday, and we support 24 missionary, whatever it is you support, 41 missionaries and different mission entities. The next time you give, you could say because of your giving, we have, what do you call the upper room thing? Um, Granny's Closet, because you're a giving church and you give to that. And thank you so much. Because of your giving, we were able to clothe 14 people, 16, whatever it is, or families. And because you're a giving church. Because you're a giving church, we have people now, to get away from finances. So because you're a giving church, we have 7 kids volunteers that are working over here, or we have 6 greeters that greet, because you're a giving church. So if you just don't want it to be about money all the time, you can say it that way. Or Wednesday night, Sean has 12 people that are helping him, because you're a giving church. Not only do you give of your money, but you give of your time as well, and your gifts, because we value giving. And so you could spend it that way on giving as well. Because hey, yeah, because we value giving and you're giving. I don't know if you all have noticed, but our little metal grates have just rusted through. And because you're a giving church, we're able to put new grates out there this time. And so here's the thing. So this is the board. I'm talking to the board. I told Pastor Mark, uh, I told him this. There's 6 pockets of giving. And I told him he needs to start taking up an offering. He needs to just quit relying on tithes coming in. Because people give to pockets. And the first pocket of giving is ministry opportunities. They're going to give because the ministry. The second pocket of giving is mission and evangelism. A third pocket of giving is land and buildings. There are people that will give hundreds of dollars to missions and not a dime to lands and buildings. There are other people that will give hundreds of dollars to land and buildings that will never give a dime to missions. The fourth pocket of giving is benevolence. The fifth pocket of giving is like a Christian education kind of discipleship kind of thing. And the sixth pocket is the how can I make a difference in the world kind of giving. So I had a multimillionaire in our church that gives he gives his tithes, but he'll give to missions, and he'll give what I have to call him, and I had to call him and say, I've got a project that we need to change the world. I need 25,000. I had to call him. He just didn't give. He did not give because I got from him behind the pulpit and said, "Hey, I need $25,000 so that we can reach X people group to do this, to do this." I would have to call him, and I would have to say, "Hey, we've got an opportunity to give. If I need 25,000, I knew he could write $25,000 like I could write $10 check." But he was not going to give it if I stood behind the pulpit and said, "This is what I need." He would give if I said, "I need $25,000. Can you do that?" If he couldn't do it, he couldn't do it. But so those are the 6 pockets. So I told Pastor Mark, I said, yes, ma'am. Ministry opportunities. People don't give, by the way, to pay off debt. They don't. Yeah, I bet you didn't get you. You probably got the senior Newberries given to that one. So people, there are 10. I wrote all this down. There are 10 reasons people give. I'm gonna give you two of the two ones. Givers love to give to fund special projects. They love to give. They love to give around stuff that they can wrap their arms around. Pastor Mark, can I tell him what our conversation about the cameras or no? So here's what I told him. He said Val had talked to him today and da da da, and so I said, did you take up an offering for those cameras? He said no. I said, did you take up an offering for those cameras? How much were those cameras? He said $12,000. I said, you take up an offering? No. Just took out Jennifer. I said, why did you not take up an offering? You have people in that church that would give, they want to wrap their arms around gifts. I promise you they want to wrap their arms around that. He said, okay, I'm going to start giving. I'm going to start doing it. So I said, start taking up. And they'll give because Pastor Mark asked them to give. They'll give because they gave to those squares because he asked them to give. So he has to touch every pocket again. Yeah, I was blown away as a pastor. I would take up the offering. It's tithes and offering time. We'd get $3,500 in. A missionary would come in. I'd take up an offering right after I took up the tithes and offering, and $4,500 would come in. And I would think, wait a minute. There was $3,500 that I took up in tithes and offering, and you people were holding out on me with $4,500 more dollars that you wouldn't give, but they did give when I asked them for the money. That was a pocket. So how do you figure out the pocket? So when you and a board, you're sitting around, you're going, wow. So-and-so gave $1,000 to the building thing. That's a pocket that he likes or she likes. Wow, so-and-so gave $800 to the TV camera. That's a project. That is a pocket that they like. So you keep putting that in your brain and putting that in your brain and putting that in your brain. So don't become weary when Pastor Mark gets up and takes up all these. There are people sitting there that will give. And now this takes time and it takes process. I'm going to tell on myself now. I pastored my first church. So I was pastoring and I said, that's when we had the facilities and the rooms, and so we met on Wednesday night. I thought, these are church people. They give on Sunday. I'm not going to ask them to give on Wednesday night. So I didn't. I quit taking up an offering on Wednesday night. Most of the time our Wednesday night offering was $10. It was like, we had people scattered everywhere, but we'd take up in the adult. I'd have probably 100 adults on Wednesday night sitting in the sanctuary I was teaching. We'd take up the offering $10 or maybe $20. That's what would come in on Wednesday night. I'm not going to take up an offering anymore. Sean, I'm there one night, and one of the family members had moved there from California, or not moved there. They came to visit from California, and I did not take up the offering. I was a young preacher, my first church. I thought I knew everything, and I didn't take up the offering. And this lady comes up to me. Well, that's kind of weird because usually a lot of guests just don't come up to at least not to me. They didn't come up to me just like, hey, I want to talk to you. But I could tell I need to talk to you. And I love this one. The Holy Spirit wants me to talk to you. I'm like, oh, great. Here we go. The Holy Spirit. All right, here we go. She said, I don't know why, but I think I need to tell you this. I had a check tonight to give to you for $10,000. But you didn't take up an offering. And because you didn't take up the offering, the Holy Spirit put a check on my spirit and said, go talk to him and tell him, until you give people an opportunity to give, you will not receive unless you ask them to give. That night, Sean, was the last time I never took up an offering. I didn't care if there was one person in there. I was taking up an offering. I had people that would come since that time. They would put rings. It didn't happen all the time, but they'd put high dollar stuff in the bag because I gave them an opportunity. And so, Pastor, I just challenged Pastor Mark to just give people an opportunity to give. I told him the story. I pastored another church. We were I can't remember if it was 1, 2, or 3 in the nation for Light for the Lost give in the nation. I mean, we're a church of 350. We're not a big church. I had an oral surgeon in my church, and he would give. He gave. I'm up there, and I'm talking about the Farsi Fire Bible. We want to be on the front edge of the Farsi Fire. He never gave a dime to the Farsi Fire Bible until I took him to a missions event. When I took him to a missions event and he heard the speaker speak and he heard about the Farsi Bible, he started crying. And I said, "What's going on, Joe?" And he said, "Pastor, my mom died this week." And I'm thinking, well, or 2 weeks ago, whenever it was, 3 weeks ago. And I'm an oral surgeon. I have all the money I need. And she left me $100,000. And the Holy Spirit spoke to me tonight. I know I've heard you behind the pulpit and heard you, but I didn't respond to that because I just didn't feel it. But tonight the Holy Spirit spoke to me and said, I want you to write a check for $100,000. You don't need that money. And I want you to give it to the Farsi Fire Bible. And as a result of that, your mom, who is unchurched, who was not a believer, is gone to eternity, will have an impact on people in the Farsi language because of what you did tonight. I can tell you, if I said, Pastor Mark, if you don't ask for the money, somebody's going to ask for it. And so I challenged him to begin that process. I can promise you that when he starts all that, somebody's got. I had people all the time. I did a 90-day. I always did a 90-day challenge. I always did like you do a faith promise. I did a tithe challenge every January. And I said, if you have never been a tither, if you will tithe faithfully and consistently for 90 days, here was my statement. If you, at the end of 90 days, you feel like you have suffered because of your giving, we will cheerfully refund your money. Because I don't believe you can outgive God. I don't believe you can't be blessed. I said, now you got to let me know that. Now you have to be a first-time giver. You have to be, you can't just be. And I need to know it so we can hold it back. But in all the years I did that, in 23 years, I never had one. I had a lot take me up on the offer, but not one said, I want my money back. But you got to give people an opportunity to give. So I don't know how I got off on that, but it felt good. And any other thoughts, comments? I'm going to stop. All right. I guess we'll see you tomorrow at 0900. Sir? Well, listen, I'm not the pastor, but if I were the pastor, I'd be taking an offering. I am not the pastor. But, hey, I will tell you this. It is going to cost money to do this strategic plan because every church, it always does. You never can. It always does. So I told Pastor Mark, you need to go. You need to talk to him. You need to have it. You need to set it down and say, this is how much money we're going to need. As long as you're not in conflict, Mel, you can leave. What? It says as long as you don't have conflict with Luella,